So here we are at Wargames once again with Mr. Rich Carlisle, who's going to be talking to us about the wonderful world of Cruel Seas. So if we can start, Rich, by me asking you the ultimate question. 2 or 3 years ago, I'm at John Stellard's house. He's got a table covered in ships. He's got some tiny little crewmen.
Yeah,
and here we are. And here we are, those few years later, and you were part of the team that took that dream and made it reality. How did that work?
Yeah, just one small part. Wow, that's a fairly open question.
Mm-hmm.
John had been working on, as you know, the rules for quite some time by that point already, and it was one of those things that he just had that itch to scratch, the passion to follow through, and as a ex-service myself, I've been able to come into it and go, that's a great idea. I'd really like to get on board with that, and got invited into the games nights and start putting my 2 penneth worth in. And myself, Gabriel, and a couple of others, Bernard, and quite a few people overall from Warlord in and out over the years, have had a chance to play test, work on extra rules, try them out, and get to a point where we can add it over to the studio.
So really, it's a game that's been in development for a long time, really, with a load of input, and I think that's one of the things that we've certainly noticed that makes it better.
Yes.
And having played it with yourself and tried out the rules, etc., it's one of those ones, a bit like Blood Red Skies, that hooked me in straight away because it's it's exactly where it should be. What do you think of the rule system in terms of its attractability?
Its attractability. I think mentioning Blood Red Skies is a good indicator as to where we were trying to go, because the focus on MTBs, I don't think it's been done really well in terms of a fast play multi-ship game anywhere really in the past that I've had the experience of myself. And what hooked it in for me was that we've gone for a scale that is really nice to model, and perhaps if you're a shipbuilder in say 1/350th, it's not much different, but you're able to take the S-boats, E-boat, the Vospers, the Fairmiles, the PT boats, and do some really nice modelling work on those. You only need to have a look at one of the ones that Derek's our in-house painter and sculptor has done work on. Absolutely lovely piece. So for me, it was a combination of the modelling and also the fact that we were, like the aircraft, playing pretty much dogfighting between ships, which I didn't know a lot about, but by the time I finished, and you've talked about Mulberry forts, and you talked about Vospers of different sizes and the different periods, the RAF rescue boats, all these coming in, and then so I never even thought of doing a Soviet fleet in the past, but looking at the ships that they have and the battles that might have been fought on the Baltic, Black Sea, between Italians, Germans, the Russians, you've got a vast array of ships that are just intriguing and look great. Let's face it, flying small ships and in a fast play, the game rules themselves are all about making it fast to dogfight between them.
That's great. That is a very good summary of the whole thing. One of the things that our readers are going to want to know about right now is the ships.
Yes.
Now, how far up are we going in terms of size of ships?
Yes. The rules themselves were always focused around the MTBs. So you're looking at things up to the size of a Fairmile at 100 foot, 100 tons in weight, I guess. So your real focus is on those small things. The Japanese themselves get their variety of small ships, but you also have the Linz boats as the smallest, more like a speedboat with a big mine on it, radio controlled. Then you go up to maybe the Vorposten, which is your kind of small coastal freighter that's been rigged with a couple of 88mm and 37mm or quad flak, that type of thing. Crewed by an experienced crew generally, but quite a heavy flak ship to protect the convoys that were nipping up and down the coast.
Okay, so you're not refighting the Battle of Midway, but
No,
instead
we're not
you're refighting the parts that could have happened around the islands out in the Pacific or
Absolutely,
whatever.
yeah. The PT boats, the small skirmishes, getting in there, taking out the barges, troop transports. It's about landing, It's very much scenario based. So you could come across situations where there's a submarine that's maybe damaged or surfaced and it's been caught napping. Or maybe there's a boat that was damaged in the last game where you can then go back and recover it, because you'd never leave fleet members behind. In a flotilla, you're a very close-knit group. So you might have had to get home, find that a mate's been left behind, and then go back out immediately to go and find them.
So it's like you're saying, it's very much a narrative scenario then,
yes.
in one sense. One of the things that got me excited when we played is the fact that I suddenly realised you could integrate across 3 game systems.
Oh, there might be the opportunity to do that, yes.
Tell us more about the ability to integrate across game systems, Rich.
Right. Yes. The idea behind 300 was to make it a standalone game, purely and simply because it's been John's passion for so long. That's how it stayed, and people might be saying, well, why couldn't we bring it into 200 with Blood Red Skies? Actually, we found that working in 300 scale meant that for the MTBs and the small ships, that really worked for modelling, and for the scale of it, you're able to put your troops on board and actually see them. You can have 1/350th larger ships like destroyers, which tend to be more objective markers, but you can easily bring those in and they look correct in scale. And we've discovered that with the 200th scale aircraft flying over them, that it kind of puts a perspective on it. As from an aerial view, as gamers, we're above the gameplay, we're looking down on it. So when you see a slightly larger aircraft over the slightly smaller ship, it kind of looks right in scale. So we can easily see that being integrated. And then, of course, bolt action. With a lot of the scenarios, you can easily see where, for example, putting Blood Red Skies in, you could have a glider raid trying to drop in some paras on a patch which is 4 inches by 3 inches on the Blood Red Skies table, becomes your 4 by 3 foot table in bolt action with your paras landing and doing their thing. And then you can have the paras escaping and being picked up by a dog boat somewhere on the coastline, and therefore you need your Cruel Seas game scenario, which I think is scenario 5, where you go in, pick them up or drop them off on an enemy coast and get out, hopefully without being picked up by the enemy boats, which are loitering around, having picked up intelligence reports of...
And of course the paras won't be as good as that as the Royal Marine Commandos.
Oh, never. Yeah. And of course
I always like to bring a bit of inter-service rivalry.
Absolutely.
The other side of it is then, I think, in the magazine I recorded about the fact you said looking forward to June 2019 when we discussed that very thing.
Yes.
Is there anything you can tell us about why we should look forward to June 2019 in particular?
In particular, you're looking at the 75th anniversary of the landings. We are planning on running a full campaign through the end of May through June, where we integrate all 3 games and play a day-by-day scenarios.
So that's the D-Day landings.
D-Day landings,
with all the guys going ashore, mapping it out and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really good.
And of course, we'll be looking forward to a new start set for bolt action.
Yeah.
We've got some Cruel Seas items and Blood Red Sky stuff coming throughout the year.
Excellent. Which
will go towards that.
Okay. So let's talk about the actual way the game plays. When I wrote about movement, it's great to see it on the static photos, but can you kind of explain it as you explained to me?
I've got to remember how I told you now.
I don't know, but yeah, it's okay. How does movement work?
Essentially, the ships, once they're moving, they don't just stop dead. And what we've done to represent that is break down a ship's speed from its relative knots value, real life, to centimetres. So, for example, a Vosper late type can do around about 32 knots, I want to say. It's 36 knots. 36 knots, which will break it down to obviously 24 and then 12 in terms of 3 different speed brackets. We went for 3 different speed brackets so that you've got that ability to speed up and slow down per bracket per turn, but you can't just stop. So if you have been travelling at 24 centimetres, 24 knots, and you want to stop, it will take you 2 turns to bring the ship down to that stationary position.
Okay. So I've moved my ship, and it was great, and we've all just looked at how it works.
Yes.
But I want to blow things apart now, Rich.
How can I blow things shooting apart? As well?
Yes. Oh. Tell me about shooting.
Well, shooting's got a nice little twist to it. We incorporate as much as we can into the chart to keep the game flowing and speed it up. So once you've got the knack of it, it'll become very easy to know what to roll. We start with a D10 as your weapon. If you think of it as a battery of weapons, so a 20mm on the front of a Vosper, again, might be a twin oar looking, would have 1 D10. You start with a base level of 5, and you've got to roll 5 or less to hit your target. But then you look at your crew experience. You might have a veteran crew, which will modify that 5 to a 7. If it's an inexperienced, that will drop it to a 3. You've also got the speed you're travelling at as your boat. You've got the speed of the enemy vessel. You've got your weapon type. You've got the weather conditions, all those sort of modifiers to cope with to work out what you actually need to roll under on the dice. So you might end up with over half range and a regular crew shooting at a medium-sized vessel that's travelling maybe at normal regular speed around 26, which means on the chart you'd work your way down, it'll be about a 1 or less to hit. So in the dogfighting on the seas, it's really difficult to hit your targets. But then once you've hit your target by rolling that 1 or less, or 5 or less, you're then going to look at the damage that that weapon does. There's no integrated saving throw at this stage. So you would then look at your weapon. 20mm causes 3d6 worth of damage. It's a twin, so you add another d6. 4d6 worth of damage. Let's say you get 20 points of damage off those 4d6. And you would then move your hull value for the enemy vessel you shot at down by 20 points. Quite simply moving the targets down. There's a chance that if 20mm hits you, it could cause some critical type of damage. So if any 6s, natural 6s were rolled in the 4 dice, you would get to roll a d10 for that. And that would cause a critical table damage hit. And then you go from there with the critical.
You know it very well. One of the great things I enjoyed was shooting torpedoes. They work slightly differently.
They do work slightly differently. What we've got to remember is torpedoes, particularly Allied ones, were notoriously fickle, expensive. Therefore, crews weren't able to practice firing the real thing, not very much anyway. And when they did use them, it was discovered that firing 1 or 2 was no good. You had to fire them in pairs or more. And it's often the case of once you fired them, you've alerted the enemy to your position with big plumes of splashing water as they're launched and steam. So you kind of have to leg it straight away. So launch all of them and leg it would be a good doctrine for the British, for example. But maybe only 1 or 2 in 10 would actually do any damage. They might not reach the target, they might go under it, they might hit it and be a dud. So we've incorporated that into a slightly different set of rolls. You start with the base level of 4, you modify it for the size of the target and speed, slightly different to the main shooting with your normal weapons. And then you have to roll to hit with the d10, same again, under your 4 or less as the base number. And then if you do manage to actually hit it, you've then got to see if it's a dud, and you use your skill check to do that based on the fact that it's your crew that have to maintain it, they have to launch it correctly, and there's all the fickle bits under the water that might occur, whether it goes into the mud immediately when it's launched, or whether it may
really big fish
get
in the way.
Yeah.
But you can't. One thing I remember particularly is you can't torpedo another. Most torpedo boats. It's only the big ships.
It's only the large or huge ships, because of course during the war there's no real record of any kind of a ship smaller than a container ship type being destroyed by a torpedo.
So what it sounds like to me, and anybody listening to this can correct me by all means, there's an awful lot of research gone to this, and a lot of historical research, and you've moved the history into a simulation as far as possible to make it a game. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. I think John would like to think of it as his library is vast and extensive, and he's read an awful lot of books, and he finds these tidbits of information which I've never heard of before, but then he can show me the book and show me the page, and it's amazing the facts that you can find out. What he's done is then put that all together in a book in a way that I think is enjoyable to read, and we've been able to take his rules ideas and work with him and play testers and come out with a very fast play set of rules. There's only a couple of charts really to work your way through. They're extensive, but once you know them, it's very quick and easy to play. So you can focus on the manoeuvring of the ships and imagining the closeness, the weather conditions, the fact that you're fighting in the dusk or dawn, trying to avoid aircraft in the daytime, trying to find your enemy in a rolling sea. Yeah, I think it really captures that quite well.
And the last question I want to ask you is the one that John told me at the open day he was kind of sick of. Yeah? Submarines?
Submarines.
You don't have to answer. It's just my last question.
Submarines, yes, we have got depth charges, yes, we have got mines, the ships carry depth charges, smoke, radar, sonar, all those pieces of equipment. So there is perhaps the opportunity at a later date. We've mentioned them in the book just for completeness, but I think...
And you're giving one away.
And of course there is one on the front for anybody who gets that, the book and the box set, starter set. It's not the main thrust of the game, nor are the big ships. It's all about the MTBs, the fast play action, people just being able to take it as it is and have fun with small scale ship battles, much like a dogfight in the sky, but on the water.
Okay, thank you very much, Rich Carlisle of Warlord Games.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Wayne.
If you have come to this video from WI Interactive, then you will be able to read the accompanying article on screen. WI Interactive is the iPad version of Wargames Illustrated, the world's premier tabletop gaming magazine. It features video and other interactive content in every issue. Find out more by following the link.